Mike, do you know? Have you interacted with his brothers?
Man, his brothers are like mobsters, bro. Like they're so different than him. Like he got some, but they really like they'll come out on the court and try to fight like almost every other game, and they're like, I guess they're a big deal back in Serbia, but they're just like they're so different than Joker.
During Game 4 of the 2021 Western Conference semifinals, this viral scuffle broke out between Nikola Jokic and Devin Booker, and while most of us had our attention on the action going down on the court itself, maybe more of us should have been looking into the stands. Because just a few rows away from the hardwood stood Nikola Jokic's two big brothers, both of which were going absolutely insane on the sidelines. For most NBA fans, this was the very first time we had ever seen Nikola Jokic's brothers making headlines, but even just based off of the limited information we knew about them already, and by that I mean pretty much just their appearance, we could all understand that these tattoo-riddled tough guys definitely ended up differently than their Winnie the Pooh resembling brother. But why? How did these three brothers end up so different? Is Michael Porter Jr. correct in calling these guys mobsters? Today, let's talk about NBA MVP Nikola Jokic's mysterious brothers. They are definitely some interesting characters, but they also have a terrifying dark side that has caused many of Jokic's Nugget teammates to endlessly fear them. But before we get into that story, did you guys know that only 3% of you guys are subscribed? Yes, 3. I see you, man. You're watching the videos, not even thinking about it, and you just never click that darn button. Chances are that you, and yes, you, I'm talking to you, are in that 97%. Don't pretend like you're not. I see you. Anyways, let's talk about Strahinja and Nemanja Jokic. Now 38 years old, Strahinja is the eldest Jokic brother, with the 36-year-old Nemanja only trailing him by 2 years. The two grew up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Sombor, Serbia, alongside their father, Branislav Jokic, as well as their mother and grandmother. Growing up, the Jokic family didn't have too much. It was difficult for them to get by, and Sombor wasn't always the safest place to live. Then, on February 19th, 1995, 12 years after Strahinja was born, came a young boy named Nikola Jokic. This picture here shows just how drastic the age gap between Nikola and his bros truly was. But nevertheless, Strahinja and Nemanja embraced him with the same kind of tough love that their father had given to them. For hours a day, the two older bros would sit on their knees and play with Nikola on his toy basketball hoop, an activity that was the future MVP's first ever experience with basketball. But Nikola's brothers were taken away from his life almost as quickly as they were put there. As a 7-year-old, Jokic watched as Strahinja left home to play professional basketball across Europe. Soon after, Nemanja traveled all the way to America to play Division I basketball for the University of Detroit Mercy, where he averaged 4 points and 3 rebounds per game over the course of 2 seasons. Nemanja Jokic was a skilled big man with a solid passing ability and a smooth touch from behind the arc, similar to his future MVP brother, except there was one problem. He only stood at 6'6". Meanwhile, the 6'10" Strahinja saw even less success than his shorter brother. Nikola would later go on to compare his game to that of Kendrick Perkins, saying, quote, "He's not that talented, but he hates to lose." Regardless of how talented either brother was, their father was as proud as can be. Branislav would go to as many of their games as possible, and he never failed to make a scene whenever he did. About their dad, Nemanja would later go on to say, quote, "Our dad is really passionate about watching the games. He screams, yells, nobody sits around him." While the elder brothers enjoyed their professional careers, Jokic was stuck alone in Serbia, brutally overweight and unable to do a singular push-up. He would say, quote, "I was taller than most of the guys and girls, and fattest too. I didn't love physical activities. In high school, I couldn't even do one push-up." As the outlier in a family full of hyper-masculine tough guys, the Joker accepted the fact that he would need to adopt a different identity to stand out. Jokic was a self-described goofball throughout all of school because it was the only way he could get by. A homebody, Jokic missed both of his brothers greatly each and every day, and was a pretty lonely kid throughout almost all of his teens. Motivated to be like his brothers, Jokic joined many local youth squads to lose weight. He was pretty tall and a pretty raw prospect, but the potential looked there. And so, he eventually went on to sign with professional Serbian team Mega Vasura, the beginning of what we all know would become a masterpiece of a career. In 2014, all of Jokic's hard work would finally pay off. As a random Taco Bell ad played late into the night as Jokic slept, the Joker's name appeared at the bottom of the screen. He had been selected 41st overall by the Denver Nuggets. Soon after, Jokic was awakened by a phone call from his brother Nemanja, who at the time was in New York. "You got drafted in the NBA. How do you sleep right now?" he heard his brother shouting from the other line. Nowadays, Nikola Jokic has purchased a 3-bedroom apartment in Denver, where he still lives with Strahinja and Nemanja to this day. Everything that they do is done in the most hyper-competitive manner imaginable, a trait that, despite all of their differences, shines bright within all 3 Jokic brothers. After visiting the brothers' new apartment, NBA reporter Howard Beck would later write, quote, "A few words of advice should you ever spend an afternoon at House Jokic. Do not play indoor basketball unless you're okay with getting tackled. If the game is cards, plan on cheating. Your opponents will be. Look up occasionally so you don't get hit by a drone. Look down occasionally so you don't break your ankle on the remote-controlled car." Despite their rough appearances, it's evident that Jokic's seemingly terrifying brothers truly are children at heart. But above all of their other shared pastimes, none of those moments compare to watching their younger bro from the front row during every home game in Denver. The two have adopted the antics of their passionate father Branislav, flipping over chairs and getting kicked out seemingly whenever the opportunity arises. Trust me, that clip of them yelling at Devin Booker was not the first time they had a meltdown in the stands. Unfortunately, Jokic's brothers also have a dark side, specifically Strahinja, who on October 1st, 2019, was arrested for assault. Drunk out of his mind, the eldest Jokic brother allegedly choked a woman and refused to let her leave the apartment they were staying in, which, although unconfirmed, was likely the very apartment Nikola Jokic continues to live in to this day. The woman tried to call the police, but Strahinja took her phone. She then rushed upstairs to get a hold of a computer, which she would use to contact a friend of hers so she could call 911. To Strahinja's surprise, the police soon arrived at his doorstep and quickly charged him with second-degree assault, false imprisonment, and obstruction of a telephone service. Still to this day, Nikola Jokic has yet to comment on his brother's crimes. For many, it's impossible to comprehend how a loved one that means so much to you is capable of committing such an irreprehensible act. Nikola needed Strahinja. Besides Jokic's wife and Nemanja, his presence was the only part of his life that had remained a constant as he traveled over to start a new life in America. From day one, Jokic had always felt like an outsider in the United States. He was not good at picking up the language. He despised American food and only cooked Serbian dishes when he could. This never felt like his home. Strahinja and Nemanja were all he had. A conflicted Nikola eventually made the decision to allow Strahinja to remain in his apartment, and the man has kept a clean record ever since. At the end of the day, it's very interesting to see just how different and yet shockingly similar these 3 Jokic brothers truly are. Had they not have been brothers, these 3 likely would have never gotten along, but in their youth, the 3 were able to set their differences aside and truly form an inseparable bond. In many ways, Nikola's goofy personality that we all love him for today only came to fruition to juxtapose the hard-nosed appearances of his brothers. others. And even though they may owe a lot to Nikola, he will always owe just as much to them. I want to end this video off looking at this clip of Nikola Jokic accepting the 2021 NBA MVP trophy. Instantly, even in a room full of the teammates he spends each and every day playing with, his attention immediately goes over to his phone, where his family is on the other side, thousands of miles away, cheering him on. A 2014 phone call interrupting his slumber marked the beginning of Nikola Jokic's NBA journey. And now, as he stood there with the most prestigious award any individual player could possibly ask for, the love and support of his family once again shined brighter than the accomplishment itself. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Remember, 97% of you have not clicked that button. And with that, as always, stay safe out there.